very big renowned economists, Steve Haney for one, and Harry Dent another, are predicting that the year 2024 will be defined and will be characterized by a mega recession that is on its way and is going to hit the U.S. economy. The last 3 to 4 years have been very tumultuous. They've been quite turbulent in terms of the United States and the global economy as well. The M2, the money supply, exploded to an all-time high of 26.2%. The U.S. administration increased the money supply to 26.2%, which inadvertently had a huge impact on the inflation. The overall rate of inflation was 9.1%. Food inflation was at over 10%. The inflation for energy was over 41%. So things like that have barely ever been witnessed in the United States economic history. Hello, everyone. My name is Nauraiz Rana, and I'm an economist with the World Bank. In today's program for New Wave, I will be reviewing the year 2023 in terms of the United States economic performance, and I'll also be sharing some projections for the year 2024 based on what a lot of various other economists around the world feel. So let me first take a step back and share the fact that the year 2023 was again dictated by some of the policies that were made to address the economic ramifications of the 2020 and onwards COVID-19 pandemic. The last 3 to 4 years have been very tumultuous. They've been quite turbulent in terms of the United States and the global economy as well. The pandemic happened, which led to permanent disclosures of various businesses of various sizes, ranging from small, medium, and even large enterprises. There were supply chain disruptions, which led to the cyclical and the natural flow of how the private sector operates, of how the economy runs and is governed. In order to address this, the United States employed a number of various policy levers. So firstly, they released a stimuli package. The M2, the money supply, exploded to an all-time high of 26.2% in February 2021. So just to put things into perspective, in order to maintain inflation at 2%, the money supply is usually kept at around 6%. But in order to spur economic activity, in order to make sure that it continues running, the US administration increased the money supply to 26.2%, which inadvertently had a huge impact on the inflation. And we saw that the inflation numbers reach up to a staggering 9.1%, the highest in 40 years. Now, in order to address the inflation, which was impacting the common man, the people, the daily workers, the middle class, the upper middle class, people belong to various socioeconomic segments of the United States, the US had to make some key measures. And here I also need to share that while the overall rate of inflation was 9.1%, food inflation was at over 10%. The inflation for energy was over 41%. So things like that have barely ever been witnessed in the United States economic history. Anyhow, moving onwards, in order to slow the amount of money that was circulating through the US economy, the United States, the US Fed, started increasing the rate of interest rates. The interest rates eventually went up to 5.5%, which again, it should be noted that this is the highest rate of interest rates over the course of the last 22 years. So the last 2 decades had never seen such high level of interest rate. Eventually, the interest rates did, to some degree, help bring down the inflation. The money supply slowed down. And now, currently, as per the latest quarter of 2023, the consumer price index year on year has fallen down to 3.1%. This is where the US economy currently stands, but it begs very important questions as to what is likely to happen in 2024 and how will that impact various countries, other countries around the world. Now, some very big renowned economists, Steve Haney for one, and Harry Dent another, are predicting that the year 2024 will be defined and will be characterized by a mega recession that is on its way and is going to hit the US economy. Why they feel that way is that because the US has contracted the money supply, and now they've brought it down to unsustainable measures, there's likely to be a lagged impact on the rate of inflation, which economists feel will go down 2%, which is sustainably the desired rate of inflation. But some also feel that it'll go below 0%, that is deflation. So what that means is that holding on to money would become much more valuable than using it and spending it. And in such a case, it is likely to hugely slow down the US economy, US economic activity, and that leads to a period of recession, raising the question as to how is it going to impact the people. It's going to impact the labor market, less demand for consumption. There'll be less production, and it'll be felt very strongly through various sectors of the economy, whether that's the service industry, whether that's the manufacturing industry, and others on the periphery as well. So Harry Dent, he predicts that the value of real estate, due to a decrease in demand, would fall down to levels of 2012. That is, over 50% of the value will be diminished. Harry Dent also predicts that the US stock market will take an 86% nosedive, and he says that for the S&P 500 companies. So those are the 500 best performing companies that are listed on the New York Stock Exchange. While there is not a direct relation between how the stock market performs and the economy, however, it cannot be ignored. And logically, if you think about that, whenever there's less activity, whenever there's less production, it is likely to hamper the revenue that is generated by many of the companies that are listed on the stock exchange. And whenever they are impacted, it directly impacts the stock prices. And thus, I'm not sure if the actual value would be 86%. But if a recession does happen, which is being anticipated and is expected, then there will be adverse impacts on both the stock market and the real estate market, as well as the labor market. That is the number of people who are employed. Personally, I hope the impacts can be mitigated. The right set of policy measures are implemented. The interest rates are brought down in order to spur greater economic activity, and the contraction of the money supply too is halted, so that though the recession cannot entirely be avoided, the impacts can be mitigated to the maximum degree possible. These are the predictions for the year 2024, which is also the election year. And I guess it would be interesting to see how the economic unraveling would impact the elections as well, because we know economy is one of the key indicators, and economic performance is one of the basic metrics to evaluate the incumbent government's performance and how they tend to fare in the upcoming elections. And now, more importantly, I also want to pivot the discussion to see how the changes in the US economy are likely to impact the global South. Because we know that US is a big exporter, it also further accords a lot in international development aid and direct aid to various countries of the global South. Any contraction in the US economy, a series of busts, is likely going to nudge the US policymakers to kind of pull back on those international spending mechanisms. And like we saw in the last recession, the big recession of 2008, it started with the bursting of the housing bubble, but the impact soon turned into a domino effect, which was seen and witnessed all across the globe. The more realistic suggestion would be for people to prepare themselves for what is ahead, uh, be mindful of their spending, and be mindful of how to best plan their economic well-being and health for the year 2024. Again, not wanting to end the year on a pessimistic note, but I do hope that the U.S. Administration does take into consideration all these various ramifications, the various policies, whatever measures that can be done to mitigate this, circumvent these adverse impacts, and employ the right set of policy measures. That is it for today, and thank you so much for being with me.